Um, right, whilst the presenters were talking, I've written down a number of things. I think the first number one point is in William's speech, we do accept risk. So take that away. We are a risk-based regulator. It's very well understood. I've always said that without running risk, you won't make money. So that is a very important part of the approach of the Commission. We've also been very busy over the last year. The revision of laws was mentioned, the development of pensions was mentioned, and generally being rather active in the world at large and dealing with the things Lyndon talked about and Andy Sloan talked about. So we have an ongoing, very active Commission. We talked about innovation. We have a director of innovation actually sitting at the table over there. I was slightly, I take feedback, so if they say we're not listening as much as we used to, then Lyndon did the vote, sort of, and that was almost no reaction. But please, if there is any feedback on that subject, just please tell us, because we are really serious about the innovation and the communication we have with you. And talk to me, talk to anybody, but Gillian in particular on the subject. The Brexit world, I'm a Brexiteer. Despite coming from Holland, I think there's the dead hand of Europe on all sorts of things. So I think we're better off. But we're only better off if we are active and take up the running. It is not something that happens automatically. And William and Lyndon talked about that. William also talked about supervision. It is part of our role. My analogy of the double yellow lines, that it is, if you have rules, you need to look at whether they are being adhered to or not. And so thereby supervision and enforcement are essential parts of what we do, and we want to do that well. Victoria talked about, as the chair of IAIS, and she talked about Kuala Lumpur and the decision being made. IAIS is going to take up some of the space that is currently occupied by IMF. And so because IMF is going to limit its activities on a much smaller number of countries, and it is unlikely that the IMF will ever come to Guernsey again. But that doesn't mean that the supranational bodies will not come to the bailiwick. They will continue to do so. Victoria also talked about the international capital standards, and being from the insurance industry and having, well, can I say, suffered Solvency II and the cost thereof and the development of the cost thereof. The Commission is very much aware that this needs to be a cost-effective way of doing things. But having an international capital standards will certainly help us, at least in our assessment. Then Lyndon, I'd never heard Lyndon speak before, surprisingly, and he held quite a powerful speech. I've done many negotiations over my career, and the way you come across as confident within discussions and negotiations is very important. Do you think we have a good case which we can defend, or instead of you go with your backing hand and say, oh, please, can I have some more, sir? No, so I very much endorse the position Lyndon took in a very powerful speech. About the European Union, my personal experience with the European Union haven't been great. It was when I was still a partner of Coopers and Lybrand, I had this brilliant idea that I would swap some of my team with a Brussels team. And so we do that with closed purse. So they would come and work in London, and some of my team would go and work in Brussels. And that was the director, DG15 was the directorate. And so I went to Brussels and said, I have this brilliant idea, let us swap. So you learn about London and we learn about Brussels, so win-win. And the man said, you're the enemy. I said, excuse me, I'm the enemy? I come from Amsterdam. And so that was my first experience in dealing with Brussels. And this is 20 years ago, so it's not a very recent event, and that has been there. So the way Lyndon approached it, I very much liked. He also mentioned that unfortunately, we have to take standards. We are a standard taker. We're not setting out, although in the fiduciary sector we have much more power in that, and we have been doing some of the setting of the standards. Lynn was talking about BEPS and all the, what is it, profit erosion and all of that stuff. That is there, as I make this little joke about my little grandson and being able to say fatka when he was 1.5 years old. I'm afraid that's the world. That's what we need to deal with, and that's what we will do. He also mentioned sort of the discrepancy between the OECD and the EU. So most of the time, certainly I quite like the practicality of the OECD. And say, oh yeah, no, that makes sense, let's go forward. But the EU and the OECD are not lined up on those things. And so if the OECD does things, that does not mean that the EU will follow that, although we would probably try very hard to do so. Then Andy, and I really admire Andy Sloan, about the stability and all the various committees and things we need to do. It is one of the things we put a lot of effort into in order to make sure that it happens in a way we would like it to happen. It's a very minor voice we have, but that is where, and Andy does that very well. The financial stability, when I was a little boy, which is a while ago, I had a little toy, and I think in English it's duikelaar in Dutch, and it is a weevil called, it is a thing that if you put it out of stability, it would come back up. And so my mental picture about financial stability is that weevil. So despite all the forces being brought on this little puppet, it will come back up. I'm a member of FinStack here on Guernsey, so we have these meetings about esoteric things. But financial stability is very substantially outside what we can do. But we can certainly help with the thinking how to improve that. Andy also talked about regulatory recognition. That's the tricky bit. We certainly will not have a lot of voice in that, but we'll certainly try very hard to make it happen. Philip Nicol-Gent talked partly about the enforcement experience, but the thing I take away from this, and I would like you to take away from this, the Commission has made substantial effort in setting up the Hong Kong office in support of Guernsey finance. And you can see very competent, very well now locked into the Hong Kong environment. And doing that, we're doing that for you. This is not for us. And so you need to pick up the running and make sure it happens. In my assessment, my personal assessment about 2 years ago when we started talking about this, that I thought that there were Guernsey firms would pick that up. That hasn't quite happened. And part of that is because there are not enough Guernsey firms anymore. If you're a Channel Island firm, then you have more loyalties. If you're just a international financial centres, you have even more different things. But here, from Guernsey, make absolutely sure that effort is not being wasted. We then talked the last bit about enforcement, and is a bit. It is essential for credibility. The standards. So as and when the IOSCO comes, they look at us, how we do things and how well we do things, and it is a substantial part of the credibility of the bailiwick. And so, ideal again. My objective: there will be no enforcement cases at all. It's not up to us. It's up to you. So thank you. Happy hunting, and see you again tomorrow. Thank you very much.